Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament Gospels, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we're going to continue the along in the same storyline that we've been following the last couple of days, where Jesus tells the parable of the great feast. Yesterday, we looked at Jesus talking about um, the being humble and humility and humbling yourself, and so we're going to continue this in verse 15. We'll go through verse 24 of Luke, where he continues this story. And so in verse 15, it says, hearing this, a man sitting at the table with Jesus exclaimed, "What a blessing it will be to attend a banquet in the kingdom of God." This is where Jesus tells the parable of the great feast. And so Jesus says to him, "A man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servants to tell the guests, 'Come, the banquet is ready.' But they all began making excuses. One said, 'I've just bought a field and must inspect it.' 'Please excuse me, who buys a field without inspecting it, right?' Another said, 'I've just bought 5 pair of oxen and I want to try them out.' Again, in this day, no one would have bought 5 pair of oxen without trying them out first. He says, 'Please excuse me.' Another said, 'I just got married, so I can't come.' That may be a legitimate excuse. The servant returned and told his master what they had said. His master was furious and said, 'Go quickly into the streets and alleys of the towns and invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.' After the servant had done this, he reported, 'There is still room for more.' So the master said, 'Go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come, so the house will be full. For none of those I first invited will get even the smallest taste of my banquet.'" And so, what Jesus is talking about here, the first thing we look at is the man who replied to Jesus about the kingdom of God, what a blessing it was be. Like, he truly didn't understand, right? He the man sitting at the like with Jesus, he envisioned the glory of God's kingdom, but he did not yet understand how to have a share in it. He didn't know yet how to have a share in it. Maybe one day he did. Hopefully he did. In Jesus' story that he tells here, many people turned down the invitation to the banquet, and this is the invitation to heaven. And the main reason was because the timing was inconvenient for them, right? How often do we see that today? And so we too, like, we have to resist, or delay, or we too, I'm sorry, may resist or delay responding to God's invitation. And our excuses may sound reasonable: work duties, family responsibilities, right? We got a lot going on, financial needs, other reasons. There'll be a ton of reasons why we avoid going to, accepting Jesus, putting him first in our lives. But the thing we have to realize is that God's invitation is the most important event in our life, and no matter how inconvenient it may be time, right? And so the thing is, are you making excuses to avoid responding to God's call, or are you making excuses like these, right? The excuses that Jesus is using, these are ridiculous. People are not going to buy a field without looking at it. People aren't going to buy farm animals without testing them out, inspecting them, make sure they work for us. So the thing we have to realize too in this day and age, the custom was to issue 2 invitations to a party. The first invitation was to announce that the event was going to happen, kind of like save the date cards, like we send out for weddings or events today. And the second was to tell the guests that everything was ready. And so they had already received the first. This was the second, right? The guests in Jesus' story insulted the host by making excuses when he sent the second invitation out. And so in Israel's history, if we're looking at this here, God's first invitation came when Moses and the prophets, right? They announced the coming of Jesus. They announced who the Messiah coming. That was the first invitation. The second invitation was his son, came from his son. The religious leaders accepted the first invitation, right? They accepted the first one, but and they believed that God had called them to be his people, but they insulted God by refusing to accept his son. They refused, so refused that second invitation. And so because of that, the master went in the story, told his servant to go into the streets to invite anyone, invite the needy to his banquet. So God sent his son to a whole world of needy people to tell them that God's kingdom had arrived and was ready for them. So that's the imagery that we see here, right? Is that first invitation was for the Israel people. The second invitation they rejected, and the entire and he's using that imagery to show that his message is for the entire world. And then he says at the end there in verse 24, "For none of those I first invited will get even the smallest taste of my banquet." He's saying, look, those that rejected me, that are have nothing to do with me, they're not going to have even a taste of the banquet that I've prepared for them. And again, this is parallel heaven and heaven here. He's talking about the kingdom of God, and he's paralleling this. He's saying, hey, look, I sent out this first invitation, you accepted that, but you didn't pay attention to the second invitation. You rejected it. You wouldn't come. You made up all these excuses as to why you wouldn't accept my son. They're ridiculous. And so because of that, you get no taste in this banquet. You get no taste bar. And so we have to be careful, right? If we have not accepted Jesus, we need to make sure that we do, and that if you haven't, that you do. And the other part of that is those who have, we need to make sure we've accepted the right Jesus. And when you say, what do you mean by that, Chad? We need to make sure we haven't just accepted religion, that we've actually accepted a relationship with Christ. Because the Pharisees and stuff, they had accepted a religion, right? They had accepted this way of life, but they didn't accept Christ. And we need to make sure we don't get caught up in that, and that we actually accept Christ in relationship with Him, and not a relationship with a bunch of things and stuff that we think we should be doing, but that we actually accept Jesus into our life. And so that's the main lesson that we get out of this is, the parable of the great feast is we have that opportunity. We are those, maybe it seems, insulting, but it's not, that we are the those that he, the other people rejected, and they rejected it. And so we're the ones in the highways and the byways. We're the ones who get that second offering. And he's urging anyone he can find, anyone he can, to accept Jesus. And that's the call. And I hope you accept that call. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching and listening. I apologize if today's video is a little bit, not as good. I'm got a little bit of a sinus cold thing going on here, so I apologize for that. But I wanted to continue to make these, and I don't want to miss one. So I appreciate you for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and do that. We would greatly appreciate that. And as always, I appreciate you for watching.